Oh, hey,
Oh wow.
just doing some
Yeah.
light reading here,
Like
partner.
we have so much going on. I've been, as you say, I think I started here at 8 o'clock this morning with the court TV segment on our exclusive that we had in ASAP Rocky about the judge and about whether or not they were to consider or they were asked whether the prosecution was asked whether they wanted to go forward twice, and we have emailed both the prosecution, the DA's office, and we've emailed. And texted Joe Tacopina's office, and we've got no response from anyone. Very interesting, I find, because it's a gag order, I guess. And
But even the attorneys in the civil matter, Ben Chu, Camille Vasquez, have been reached out to by us,
right,
and they're not gagged, but they
uh,
have a very important interest in this ASAP Rocky case, and they have not responded as well.
yeah.
While we're talking about it, fantastic job this morning on my old Stomping Grounds Court TV with Julie Grant. Did a great job, and just congratulations on for me just getting up at that hour to watch was a
Yeah.
victory.
You gotta give that hour. I had to be all made up and everything
I
on the
know,
air and all that kind of stuff. And I'm
I
still
know,
here. I'm the same thing
I
that was it.
know.
I just added the earrings because I was a little late this morning.
Let me talk about. So, we've got a lot of comments. We've over this ASAP case. We've had a lot of stuff in part because of our tips and our sources, but so much. And we'll get to this in one of our latest comment shows. We haven't done a comment show in a while. But Linda, I love your glasses. Linda, you're dripping the bling. And I really started to feel, like the ugly stepchild. So check this out. Red T-shirt, huh?
To match your
So
red chair?
pretty good.
Is that to
Pretty
match
good.
your red chair
Hey,
right
well,
behind you? Look at that.
I have to choose my battles, and winning a sartorial battle over LKB is just not happening.
Well,
So,
someone suggests that your skeleton in the background should have a top hat. So maybe,
oh well, he's
maybe
got the
he'll
winter hat on
develop that.
now.
He's
He's got
got
the
the
winter
win.
hat.
All
So
right.
maybe as we move into spring, we'll replace the
Yeah,
chapeau.
maybe a top hat and
Hey,
tail.
one more thing that totally apropos of nothing. Ready for this? Okay,
Okay.
we know that we've kind of bonded right with Miss Shorty down under. And I just got the Rams schedule for 2026. Guess where they're going to play? Australia. Australia,
Are
mate.
you kidding? The NFL's moving to Australia?
Yeah, well, they've been doing these, European games for the last few years, but
Right.
now down under. So,
Wow. Maybe
warning
you'll
Miss
go.
Shorty, I will find you because I haven't been there in a few years, and I would love a reason to go. Like, hey, my Rams are going to play there.
Yeah,
So I wonder where they
that'd be
would
pretty
play.
great.
They must have. I'm not familiar. They have a big soccer
Well,
football stadium.
can we ask Miss Shorty? She
Yeah,
probably
where would they
knows.
play? Where would the NFL play if they
Yeah,
come
where
there?
would
I'm
the
assuming it's
NFL
going to be
play?
Sydney. I didn't look closely enough, but I think it's
Yeah,
going to be Sydney.
yeah.
Anyway, that's all
Anyhow,
the
so
strays that I've got. I know we got a lot of stuff to get to,
we have
so
a lot of
come
stuff
on.
to get through today. So let me just say we're gonna do ASAP Rocky at the end of the show. Nia will be on again. Our guest host will be on to talk to us about that. We have some interesting issues, some interesting questions. I know I love Miss Shorty. Says here comes drama. Yes, we do too. We've all gotten to love Miss Shorty. I don't have the courage to vape like she does because I don't do smoking. I don't do drinking. What am I going to do? Actually, I do cosmopolitan and a little champagne every once in a while, but that's really not drinking. That's like, mm, you know,
Sounds
that's
like
like for
juice
yeah, well, it's like Hawaiian punch, to be honest with you.
with the
But
accent on the
anyhow,
punch.
so with the accent of the punch, yeah. So we're gonna talk about a punch too. We have a case that we're gonna talk about second, and that's gonna be the case not guilty in Judge Bev's courtroom today.
Crazy.
The case of Penny McGee, right? Penny McGee. Do I have
Yeah,
that right?
Penelope. You may call her
Penelope.
Penny, Penelope McGee. Yeah.
Penelope McGee. So and that evolves around maybe a punch, maybe not. We'll see. We're real interested. I have some real interesting stuff about that. But she was found not guilty. We'll talk, and we're going to have one of our viewers. I hope she's going to get on here who actually told us to. Look at the case. And so we did look at the case. Thank you very much. Here comes drama for the interview. I'm hoping that my co-host here, who knows how to cut these things, and well, he doesn't have to cut, just
And
post it. We'll
I will
have it
find it.
posted tomorrow. It's there for download. It'll be gone pretty soon,
I will
and
find it.
on our Justice Serve TV website, and then we'll tweet it or X post it out also. And so that's it. And we're gonna start. Before we get to those two cases with a big directed verdict, something that maybe here ASAP Rocky we'll be talking about this week. We don't know, but it was a great directed verdict in a case, in a case actually in Georgia, and it evolved around a tragic situation. Remember the Ahmed Aubery case, Michael Bryant, where he was killed. He was tracked down by the McMichaels, the father and son team, and then they're in jail. They're in jail for life with the state.
As is the guy I really think was just guilt by association was Roddy Bryant, who
Right.
had the damning video
Evidence. I
where he
thought it was
recorded
great.
on his phone. They were so
That was
happy to
great.
turn it over. Look at this. Look what happened.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah.
And I was down there for that case in lovely Brunswick, Georgia, a tiny little town, and we were ready to go. We had it on the board in pencil to go down and follow this case, but then the judge said, "Oh wait, let me go to a clip here. Oh wait, I don't have
And
it."
it's the prosecutor. It's the prosecutor, right?
This is the
her name,
prosecutor who was initially involved in the investigation.
Jackie
Then
Johnson.
Jackie Johnson, Jacqueline removed herself because of an apparent conflict because Gregory McMichael had called her within an hour of the incident and said, might have a problem here. And then she appointed somebody in her stead that also had a conflict because had worked with Travis McMichael, the actual shooter. So the charges against her were, I think, let me get the official word here because it's kind of oddly violation of the oath of her office and also obstructing justice or hindering charge.
And that was dismissed. Excuse me, I dropped something on the floor.
Yes,
as I leave you again, go pick it up.
That was dismissed before today. That was dismissed.
The judge found, she actually testified. I think the judge found not a scintilla of evidence. That not a scintilla. He said.
Yeah. How much is a scintilla again?
Oh, you can't even see it. I mean, okay. I don't drink because I would get drunk on a scintilla of drinking. But that's how I look at it. But unusual, right? Unusual. A big loss there. And then they say, okay, well, there's still the major charge, the felony charge, and all of violating her oath of office, which is an interesting charge. And today, didn't even send the case to the jury. The judge, by the way, had some wonderful words apparently with the family of Ahmed Aubery. He said why he had to do this, right? And the case was dismissed on something in Georgia. And we're going to have Doug Weinstein on tomorrow. He'll explain Georgia law better than I. I just read about it. It's something called the demurrer, which means that even if everything in the criminal complaint were true, you can't be guilty. And the reason why is that the oath of office that was pleaded in the complaint charging her with a criminal action was the oath of office she took when she was going to be in a temporary position there. It wasn't the oath of office she took. Yeah. It's very technical when she became a prosecutor. So she couldn't be charged with violating that oath of office because that oath of office didn't apply to her when she was the lead prosecutor at the time of the Travis McMichael Ahmed Aubery incident. And so it was very technical. It had to be dismissed. Brian Steele, remember him, Brian Steele? From the YSL case, represented Jeffrey Williams, YSL. He represented Jackie Johnson. He made the motion, and it was granted. Now, we've been kidding around online in X Twitter with somebody who pretends to be Brian Steele. We try to get we say we want to get him on the air, but Brian Steele doesn't do interviews. So the only way we can talk to a Brian Steele is talk to a phony Brian Steele, and he's very funny about it. He actually loves our posts and all sorts of stuff like that. But so we're going to talk more about that tomorrow night. Yes, Doug will be back. The great Doug. Will be back again.
Let me throw in some demure reflections here, because in California we have the demurrer there. It's unusual to happen during trial. It really doesn't even happen up to the brink of trial. It's basically the equivalent in federal court would be a 12B6 motion, failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. Right. And it basically says if everything in here is true, you got bupkis, you got nothing. Right. So that same standard applies ultimately in a directed verdict, right? But to see it happen and unfold as it did, Brian Steele's a genius. He probably looked at something most people have just skipped right over, right? That is the specific oath that was taken.
Right.
You and I, we take oaths, right? We're officers of the court, and that's pretty much standard for an attorney. It doesn't change much over time. But if you're going from office to office, as Jacqueline Johnson was working for the government, certainly it could change. And so he was smart enough to dig into that and say, aha,
Yeah. With Keith Adams, and I had the situation when I was a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor in Monmouth County, New Jersey. You had to take an oath, right? You sworn in, you take an oath, and then the prosecutor left because it changed. It was a new prosecutor was being appointed, and while there was the legislature was considering the new prosecutor, we became temporary attorney generals. So the attorney general came in. We had to take an oath to be an attorney general, right? Temporary attorney general, basically, you were, you know. And then when the other prosecutor came back, a new prosecutor came in, replacing the old prosecutor, we had to take another oath to go back to being prosecutors in the county.
Right.
So it'd be like the situation if I were charged with some wrongdoing on my temporary attorney general oath. That couldn't apply because I wasn't acting as an attorney general. I was acting as a prosecutor.
Yeah, and
So it
it's
was very
it,
interesting.
it makes some people mad, of course, because it never gets to the merits of the actual case. It is such
Yeah.
a technical objection. But I wonder if, and we could talk to Doug more about this tomorrow. What's the sense in the community there? Do they feel like they didn't get enough of their pound of flesh with the McMichaels brothers and Roddy?
Right.
I'm just very curious if they feel like they've been robbed of justice as it relates to this woman.
Yeah, and you know, we've also been talking to, and I don't know whether he can come on, Jason Sheffield. He represented, I believe, Travis McMichael in the state case. Be interested to see his take on this, because you know, you have to you get the client that you get. I mean, it's you know, sometimes you're assigned the case, you get the client you get.
Yeah.
You know, and as attorneys, we do the best we can for everyone, even if they're guilty, because sometimes they're not guilty of the top crime. I explain that to people. Maybe somebody charged with murder is guilty of manslaughter. That's still, they still need a defense attorney. They need a win, and the justice system should work and charge people and convict people appropriately. So more on that tomorrow night, Michael Bryant, because you
Yeah.
and I are not Georgia attorneys, although I feel like
Nope.
we've become one.
Although,
You
yeah,
know?
it's kind of I've kind of adopted it in some ways. Not Fulton County. No, I'm trying to avoid Fulton County, but it's a
You were
lovely
there.
state.
Yeah. And by the way, the reason why we know all this is infamous Sylvia was in the courtroom because the court there again denied streaming of the case. And I say again, as I said this morning when I was interviewed on Court TV for the Rocky ASAP case, is that I was on a panel last week with the chief judge, the Court of Appeals here, our top court, it's like the Supreme Court, Rowan Wilson last week, and we discussed on the whole panel with everyone, former attorney generals for the state of New York, that it's openness, that you need that transparency so that people have faith in courts. If they don't have that transparency, hint, undo the gag order in ASAP Rocky, you don't see what's going on. So now, there is a case that we do see what's going on, and we've seen what's going on because we've had a wonderful chatter here. And she actually is waiting in the green room to talk about the Penny McGee case. And
Yeah,
what?
when she mentioned it last night, and we're like, what? I don't know, because we've kind of been doing other stuff. But even though we were up at Karen Reed last week, and I
Right.
believe they're going to be back in that same courtroom tomorrow for some matters, we
That's
weren't.
Miss Bev. That's Judge Bev's
Judge
courtroom,
Bev,
right?
yeah, who
Yeah.
we saw in a very different light today. And, last week I was ragging on her saying she never rules from the bench. She just never. What a shocker that today she actually did in about as final way as you possibly could. So thanks to our audience member. And do we identify her as who she
Yes,
really is?
yeah.
Or by her?
She's agreed to go on the effect. We did
Okay.
all the research, and I watched the medical examiner testimony, and I was horrified. So we're going to do a little bit of that, but I want to bring Joanna White into from the back from our green room, our backstage, on
Is
because
she incognito?
without her,
Hello.
Hello.
she may be incognito, but I give her credit because she was in court all the time, and she brought this case to our attention. And she said it's it's ridiculous, and she felt very strongly about it. So we tracked you down because you go by the name of
That was
Moon.
interesting.
Moon, what was your stage name when you're here in our chat?
Well, my
Joanna?
YouTube channel name is Moon Goddess.
Moon
Right.
Goddess.
And when you chatted, was it Moon Goddess or was it Moon 14 something or other?
Moon Goddess 1444, I think, or something. My mother's date of birth.
Okay.
Very
Well,
nice.
yeah,
There's always a
that's
good
really
story
nice.
behind these names.
Yeah, and so
Yeah, and
because of
Michael's
you,
looking good in red, hun.
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. So we tracked her down, and she would like to remain incognito on the stage, but you can hear her and you kind of see the little and go look for her. Yes, I know it must have been a surprise when you got my email. Hi, how you doing? But we thought that you should get the credit for bringing this to our attention, because else we wouldn't have done it. And you're right. Tell us why you felt so strongly about this case. What was the case about, and what happened?
First of all, I can't really take too much credit because I knew nothing about the case. My local media here in Boston, Massachusetts hasn't shown anything about it. I didn't know nothing. It was Melody Little, actually, whose community on YouTube that I am a member of. And she's a civil attorney out of New York, and she has a YouTube channel, Melody Little. And she has a really great legal analysis breakdown. So I like listening to her. I gained so much. And she has a really nice community that she's building on YouTube. But what got me going with this case,
then you joined our community.
Yes, exactly. Well, there's a couple of YouTubers that I'll follow. You guys are one. I enjoy listening to your dialogue. And it's up my alley. I can't go with everybody. When I'm following somebody and they're giving me information, especially regarding true crime, I want facts. So in the Penny case, I knew nothing about it, but as I started to begin to learn the facts through Melody's commentary in her channel, I realized something's very wrong. The case should not have been brought.
Now you're talking about Penny McGee, not
Penny
Daniel
McGee.
McGee. Right.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I just feel like the prosecution, I don't know what they're doing over there in Norfolk County, but Karen Reed case, I felt strongly about that. That case should not have been brought. And so when this case came along, I really was like, okay, something's just not right. How do you make a case out of nothing? And when you listen to the facts in this case, it's easy to see that she didn't have an argument with her husband or ex-husband, and then he had a heart attack because she was yelling at him.
So let's bring our viewers back to this. She was charged with murder because she went to manslaughter. Okay, she went to her ex-husband's house, who was some big politico in the past. His name
he was involved with Dukakis's
back in the day.
And she went to her ex-husband's house. We'll talk to her because they were evicting her from her own house, and she went to speak with him. And as you could imagine, apparently there were words spoken. And then during the middle of the altercation, of which there initially was a one recitation, but the middle of the altercation, where apparently, and we'll hear it on cross-examination, he was grabbing her hair, according to what were in the police reports, and pushing her down the hallway and pushing her into the refrigerator and all. The prosecution said no, that didn't happen. They relied on her daughter's testimony and claimed that her mother hit her father, and then the fight escalated. But in any event, that in the middle of this, he had, as he's there's no doubt that he's going down the hallway dragging her at the point, he has a heart attack and he dies because he's older and he has heart trouble, a lot of heart trouble. He has diabetes. He's infirm. And then, besides shoving a little bit, her hands didn't touch him. I think she may have slapped him at some point, but he was grabbing her and dragging her, and he dies, and they charge her with manslaughter on the basis, and you'll hear it from the medical examiner. I heard it, and I know you were in court when this happened, that there's something called the National Association of Medical Examiners who have a guideline, and they say, somebody is in the room when somebody dies, and there's anything, even words like "boo," and you die.
Oh,
I kid you not. Right. Michael Bryant just dropped that. You are going to be charged with homicide. And this is the same office that apparently has been dealing with the Karen Reed case, and also dealing with the Sandra Birchmore case out there, from what I read. And so the defense attorney who was appointed is a very good defense attorney who's also involved in all these cases. And you said he was really good, right, Joanna?
Yes, he is. Larry Tipton, he's really good at what he does. He had an awesome closing argument today. Melody's on my brain. I love her so much.
Well, you're going to be saying that about us too. Linda Michael's on our brain.
Penny she didn't testify. I thought that was a good call for him to have a bench trial with Judge Beverly Cannoni. I didn't have the best view of the judge going to the court, but being there yesterday, I realized how much I think she's pretty pleasant and she's fair. And if I was in that situation as Penny McGee was, I would have chose the bench trial in front of Judge Bev. And
but
so
what was it, Joanna, that made you said that this case was very important to you? Why?
Well, because I live in Massachusetts, but I just want to make a correction real quick.
Okay.
Penny was actually living at her ex-husband's house.
But he was going to be evicted. That's right.
No, right. She was being evicted from a home that the family owned. Right. It was the parents passed it on. It was a trust. It was owned by the trust. The ex-husband's brothers were the ones evicting her.
Got it.
And then you have to take in an account to her daughter did not have the best relationship with her. And so there was some ongoing issues there as well. So when Penny went to the house, once we reviewed the documents and we looked at the police reports and such, she went in there. She might have been very angry that she was being evicted by email, and they might have had some words. They were sitting on the couch. When he yelled at her to leave, she gets up to go leave, but he wants to grab her hair and starts throwing her around the house and doing that tugging thing. And she could have hit him, but she didn't. If it was me, I would have been fighting him off of me. But the whole idea, I just felt like this man had a lot of health issues. And we can't say what kind of health he was in and if that didn't contribute to his death. I think his anger was his own demise.
I think there was something interesting in this case that reminds us to understand that homicide has two meanings, one for the medical examiner and one for the attorneys.
Oh, this medical examiner.
and because, any medical examiner, when they decide manner of death,
very good though.
And they say homicide, that doesn't mean it's a criminal case. That means in their mind, it's the simple one taking of life by another human. That's what it is. It could be justified. Right. It could be self-defense. It could be all these things. They're not making a legal determination. They're just making a medical determination. I think what we should do, again, for us, we were kind of new to this, very new to this until you brought it to our attention, which we appreciate. I have a couple little clips here. The first is when you mentioned the daughter, and she was on the stand in part because she's the one that called 911. So this is a pretty intense. I think I got the right one here. Let's check. This is a pretty intense call here. How do we like it so far? Where did that go? Oh, there it is. Hold on. I'm sorry. There we go.
This is the 911 call. What's going on? Okay, what just happened? I didn't handle it. What just happened?
So, not as intelligible as you might like, but you certainly get a sense of the fear, the drama, and that's the daughter there who made the call.
She was yelling at the dad to stop. And so she obviously saw the dad grabbing onto the mother and throwing her from the wall to the refrigerator into the front hallway. And I just felt like if he had stayed on the couch and asked her to leave, after meeting her yesterday, I'm sure even if she was upset that she would have got up and left. She's a really pleasant woman, and it was just obvious that it was a bad situation. The family dynamics wasn't the best, but by all accounts, Everybody I met in that family yesterday said that he was a good man and he was a good father.
You know,
And
toward
they
the end of
must
that,
have had a good relationship because Penny was his power of attorney. She took care of him after 2 recent car accidents. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics to this case.
toward the end of
So-
that call, we hear, we need an ambulance. So it sounds like the fight is underway, or the confrontation, the altercation, and then he must have gone down.
He
And then
collapsed.
we hear,
And she
we
was
need an
doing,
ambulance.
and she was doing CPR.
And she did, and Penny did CPR.
She immediately
Right.
did CPR. Now, the medical examiner determined that Savis's cause of death was cardiac dysrhythmia following an altercation in a person following an altercation in a person with hypertensive and arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So just so you have that.
So let's look at some of this cross-examination. You know, we've kind of laid the groundwork. We know that her testimony was all of these things existed, the cardiac issues, he had diabetes, all these medical issues existed.
He was one cheeseburger away.
Okay. And so her opinion basically was that altercation pushed him over the top and therefore was a homicide, and the prosecution.
I love our jurors.
The prosecution ran with it and said, "Oh, well, let's make this not just a medical homicide. Let's make it a legal homicide, illegal homicide, in this case, manslaughter." So what we have for you here is just a bit of the cross-examination, which I think is helpful, not just to see Mr. Did you say it's Tipton? Is that right? Is that the attorney?
Mr. Tipton was the attorney, right?
Yeah, Tipton, yes.
Okay.
He was awesome.
Angry in the presence of another person. Therefore, this becomes death at the hands of another. A second person is involved in the situation. And it is a medical definition, not a legal definition.
I understand that. But the government is relying on you to make the connection of who's responsible for the precipitating event that resulted in a cardiac event. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And so if Mr. Savage became belligerent and became angry and had a flood of hormones just because Miss McGee's in the same room,
but there was a witness.
She's responsible?
There is a witness who said that they were interacting with each other. This is not a situation where she was sitting in the room not interacting with him. Therefore, there were two people involved in the discussion per the reports that are part of my decision, which indicates that there were two people involved, not just the decedent.
Is it your testimony also, in your medical opinion, that someone can have a, quote, vigorous verbal argument and that would sustain a finding of manner of death such as you've made in this case?
Yes.
But doesn't the literature that you've quoted so much talk about homicide and heart attack doesn't include just vigorous verbal argument?
No, some of these documents do say that it can be
Show me
pure.
a document that says that.
As we've discussed in the name guidelines on page 13, that paragraph 28, deaths resulting from fear/fright induced by verbal assault.
And you mean that's just a verbal argument?
Yes.
Let me ask you this before I forget again. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical.
Okay.
The two people, Mr. McGee and Mr. Savage, were having a discussion that escalated into a verbal argument. And Mr. Savage became belligerent. And assuming for the next fact that he told her to get out of the house, and he pushed her against the living room wall. And assuming the next fact, and hypothetical, he continued pushing her several times, pushing her into the adjacent kitchen dining room area. And for the next fact, for this hypothetical, he pushed her into the kitchen table, which resulted in several plates being knocked off the table and broke on the kitchen floor. The next fact, he then pushed her into the kitchen refrigerator, grabbed her by the hair, and began to push her down the hallway towards the front door. And the final fact, when they entered the front hallway, Mr. Savage fell and collapsed. Based on that hypothetical, is it your opinion then that the precipitating event that resulted in the cardiac event at issue was not Mr. Savage's own anger and his own conduct and assaulting Miss McGee and pushing her into a wall and then pushing her into the kitchen and then pushing her into kitchen appliances and then pushing her down the hallway? And while he's pushing her and grabbing her hair, he collapses. Are you saying that it's still somehow she's responsible, she's the precipitating event?
Yes, per the medical definition of homicide.
Oh, this
Wow.
got me. This got
Wow.
me because she also, by the way, admitted that she did not review the victim's medical records beyond the ones of the night of the incident at the hospital. She never listened to the 911 call and maintained it would not have changed her opinion anyhow because of that. This, I agree with Disney Nerd, his opinion here. This is scary. I would love to know what my husband thinks about this because I know that, if you rob somebody, you have somebody, you're in the middle of robbery, you're getting robbed and somebody puts a gun at you and you have a heart attack, you could be charged with manslaughter. But this, come on. I mean,
Yep.
come on.
And that's what Judge Bev seemed to
I
say
have an
today. Come
argument
on.
with you, and you go ahead and have a heart attack. You come knocking at my door talking about arresting me for manslaughter. I mean, there was no way Beverly Cannoni was going to rule that she was guilty. No way. Massachusetts does not like setting precedent. Thus is the reason why we have these old laws. But like I said now, if I was in that situation with that same set of facts, and it was Judge Beverly Cannoni, I would have took a bench trial because I'm going to tell you why. She's going to follow the standard of the law. Rather than giving that to 12 people to be all confused and not understand what in the world was going on and get all emotional behind the daughter's testimony, that would have been a total injustice.
Well, I'll tell you what, Joanna, you've been great bringing it to our attention, and for the next town over in Stoughton, the Birchmore case with my husband is involved, and they couldn't figure out that somebody's death was a homicide. When they called it a suicide, really, and here they're calling somebody whose hair is being pulled, bringing down the hallway, and he has a heart attack.
How dare she be heavy enough that it caused him stress and he had a heart attack?
It caused him stress.
And she's really petite. She might look a little bit bigger on the camera.
I was being facetious.
A very petite woman, and her husband seemed to be a little bit larger than her. So who's winning that battle if he's grabbing her by the ear? He's full of age. Like I said, he might have been a good man and a good father, but he definitely got angry, and that probably wasn't the first time. And he was in car accidents.
It doesn't matter. The medical examiner is the one who's supposed to be the barrier between something bad happening and this.
It's like she's a frustrated attorney or something because she just
took
that leap from medical examiner
to psychic
cause of death to maybe this is actually a crime, and I fault the prosecution for doing that.
She knew how he felt before he died, and well, I just felt the medical examiner to be very nervous, and so there was
nervous. I think she was like this is my opinion, and I'm not changing it. And
was
yes,
very
by the
cocky.
rule, by what the National Association said, this is it. And if there's another person in the room who says, boo, and you die, boom.
The first day I watched her with my favorite cupcakes, and I felt the same way about her. I kept thinking, oh, I could just smack that Boston attitude out of her, you know. But then when I saw her in the court, when I saw her in the courtroom and I watched her testimony, she was very nervous. And I just, you know, I tend to get a feeling. And sometimes when I get a feeling, I like to really not say nothing. But she was very nervous. And it made me think back to that testimony with Larry Tipton saying that the MS police officer, trooper, I can't remember his name, was in the autopsy room. But every time he asked her if she had a conversation with any said trooper, the answer was no. She came off very strange to me in that way. And I don't know what's going on with Mass State Police, but I'm sure you all know that that's a big problem here in Massachusetts. They stay in a bunch of mess. And reason, I think, in my own opinion, is because in Massachusetts, it's always been about who you know.
Yeah.
And so with this case, you even have to go far as back as to think about the politics of this whole case. The daughter had a connection to Suffolk County District Attorney Connolly. Okay.
Yeah, and he was a big Democrat at one point here. But you know what, Joanna? We're going to have to say goodbye to you tonight. We're going to, not forever, but just tonight.
No,
And
this has been nice.
we think that this is so great that you brought to our attention. We hope you come
Really
back
help it.
and go in the chat. And we thank you for coming on the air with us so that you know, as we've been trying to do, we've been trying to showcase some of our viewers, by the way. We started out.
I appreciate coming on with you guys and giving you my little insight. And I would just say if everybody could go follow Melody Little, if you haven't, she's a great commentator as well. And I'm sure you guys would love. You should actually ask her to come on your show. She would be great on your show.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Terrific
I think
idea.
she would be great. But thank you for the invite. It's been nice hanging out with you guys.
Thank you. Come join the chat. Come back.
We
into the chat.
appreciate it.
I will.
Okay.